Well, it's good to see everyone. Thank you, friends, for coming to our BLT today. My name is Jason Alari. I'm the Executive Director of the Historical Society. You probably noticed the table as you came in that's filled with goodies, including flyers about our upcoming events. Please check those out. Take a flyer. Laura wanted me to highlight our next History Shaken and Stirred event on October 3rd. That's at Covalent Spirits, 6 to 8 p.m. October 5th will be our Partnership History Expo at Exploration Commons at the library in Westminster, 9 to 12 p.m. That'll be a Carroll 250 themed event, October 5th. October 15th, our next BLT, Sam Riley will be talking about taverns along the turnpike. And this flyer is chock full of amazing events and programs at the Historical Society that you can check out. We want to give a special acknowledgement to our BLT sponsors today. We have Joyce Jones as a sponsor of today's talk. Is Joyce here? Hi, thank you. Barbara Alsh. Is Barbara here? Thank you for sponsoring. Dawn Thomas is another sponsor. And Jason's mother, Mary Dudderar, also sponsored. So thank you all for sponsoring today's talks. The sponsorships for the talks help pay for the rental of Grace Hall, some of the refreshments, the BLT recordings in partnership with the Media Center. So we are very appreciative of your sponsorships. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Jason. Jason Dudderar grew up in the Uniontown area and at a very young age started riding in the hunt by sitting in his father's lap. He is now the master of the Carrollton Hounds. Jason is a graduate of Westminster High School and St. Mary's College of Maryland. He and his wife live in Parkton with their 3 daughters, ages 15, 12, and 10. When not on horseback, Jason is Vice President and CFA with Morgan Stanley. He also serves on the board of the Carroll County Land Trust. And some of you know we are the caretakers of the Land Trust documents at the Historical Society. We're delighted that Jason will share the long-standing history and adventure of fox hunting in Carroll County and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Jason. Okay, let's see how this goes. First, thank you to Jason, thank you to Lynn Wheeler and the entire Historical Society of Carroll County. This is a great thing that to be able to share the story of Carrollton Hounds and fox hunting in Carroll County. It's also a nice thing that the Historical Society does for Carroll County in general, to tell some of the stories that maybe are lesser known about the county. And I think it's a great asset that the county has. And looking at some of the prior talks, I'll do my best to live up to the high quality productions that have been put on by this organization. So we'll start with this presentation that I put together a number of years ago when I seemed to have a little more time on my hands. So some of the pictures are a little outdated here, but they'll do the trick. And yesterday, Lynn called me to ask about my introduction. And I said, well, what you had on the website was very nice and very flattering. I said, but it doesn't mention that I have a tremendous wife, Jen Dudderar, who helps me a tremendous amount, allows me to do what I do at work and here with the club. And I said, you know, I am very busy with family, work, and the hunt club. And I try to keep it in that order. I think if you talk to Jen, sometimes that order gets mixed up. But that's the order I try to keep it in. I'm lucky to have 3 daughters, 3 beautiful daughters. And she asked when I started riding, and I said, well, you know, as soon as I could sit on Dad's lap on a horse. So this morning, when I was putting the final touches on what I was going to say, I went back to some pictures that, again, my lovely wife had scanned back into the computer a few years ago. And so this picture was taken around 1977, 1978. And this is at our home right across the street from areas that we still fox hunt or fox chase in. And around this time, Dad would have been just starting his path into fox hunting with a gentleman named Buck Blackston, who lived on the corner of Adams Mill Road and Brooks Mill Road. And that was sort of Dad's introduction to fox hunting at the time. This is one of Dad's first and favorite horses, Sandy, a Tennessee Walker. And I thought I'd add it as part of my personal story and how it relates to the history of Carrollton Hounds and fox hunting in Carroll County. Later, this would have been late elementary school, middle school. This probably would have been about the peak of my youth fox hunting experience. I was going out with Dad most Sundays. It was either go fox hunting with Dad or church with Mom. And I decided, even though I had to wake up earlier, I would go fox hunting during this period in my life. And this is at a hunter pace, I believe over at Sammy Carr's place, outside of Taylorsville on the Salem Bottom Road area. And then this picture sort of brings it full circle. This would have been around 2011, and that's my father on the left, me on the right, and my oldest daughter, Caroline, when she was about 1. Now she's 15 and a freshman in high school. So, that's a neat juxtaposition between those three pictures, especially the first one and this one. Like Caroline, I sort of peaked of riding and fox hunting around middle school. Then I started to pursue other things. Primarily lacrosse became my passion. And so for middle, high school, and college, I was primarily focused on lacrosse. When I came back from school, I decided to get back into fox hunting for whatever reason. And by that time, Dad was hunting with an organization called Plum Run Hunt Club, which is just over the Pennsylvania line. And Diane Doherty's here, good friends of the Dudderar family and friends of Plum Run and fox hunting in general. Have a lot of memories with that family and that club. A very nice lady, Susie Reingold from New York City, had that pack. But around that time, even though I was interested in it, Plum Run decided to close down for various reasons. Dad, I think, was ready to stop fox hunting at that time, but I was just getting my juices going again. And so I sort of drug him over to Carrollton Hounds, and we started fox hunting with Carrollton Hounds, which Dad has a pretty long history with, which we'll dig into as we go here. But that's sort of an initial part of my story and how it relates to Carrollton Hounds and fox hunting in Carroll County. Before I get into the history, I thought for the people that aren't familiar with fox hunting, I'd talk about what is fox hunting, what is Carrollton Hounds. So fox hunting, or Carrollton Hounds, is a fox hunting club. What is fox hunting? When people ask me, you do fox hunting, what is that? And I say, well, picture the old English hunt prints. That's what it looks like. A lot of times people are picturing me in camouflage and a rifle, and I explain, no, picture this type of scene. And then usually 9 out of times it's, oh, people do that, actually do that, or people do that in the United States. I get that a lot. So it helps to visualize what it is, but it's the sport of mounted riders chasing wild fox with a pack of hounds. Fox chasing might be a better term than what people like to refer to it today to give a more accurate description. There are non-live hunts or chases where people drag the scent, and then the huntsman and the hounds have to figure out the path that someone has laid down with an artificial scent. But at Carrollton Hounds, it's a live fox, a wild fox that we discover with use of the hounds. So what I thought I would do is walk you through what a typical hunt looks like. So here we are meeting together at the beginning of the hunt. This is an opening day where the hounds get blessed by a priest, and then we go out and do the fox hunting. You can see that we're gathered. Everyone there is on their own horse for the most part, and then the hounds belong to the club. The huntsman and a few helpers bring the hounds to the meet, and then we move off from there. Here we are moving off. In the center, you see the huntsman on the white horse, and her helpers, called whippers in, on the outside. They make sure the hounds are chasing the correct quarry and not chasing deer or going where we don't have permission to go. Here they're packing or riding to the first cover, the first area that we're going to put hounds into, and so they're in fairly tight. Later on, the whips move to the outside and are making sure the hounds don't do things that we're not allowed to do. Go where we don't have permission. Chase something besides fox or coyote. Here we are making our way to the first cover in this story that I'm trying to tell. And then here's the hounds entering the cover, going into the woods, going into a cornfield, an area where a fox might be hanging out or hunting itself. Once they enter, one hound might find the scent of a fox and start to open up or bark. We call it opening up. Once one starts to open up, then the other hounds come to that spot and open up, and now they start in what we call full cry, when all the hounds are chasing the scent of the fox, trying to figure out where the fox is, and we're going alongside with the hounds, trying to keep up with the hounds, listen to the hounds in full cry, and hopefully get a glimpse of the fox to see, isn't that neat? We see the fox going cross country, and then we see the hounds follow soon after it. Here's a whipper in on the edge of the cover, following along with the hounds. Here at this point, the fox is still in the woods, trying to get away. The hounds are trying to catch up to it and find it. And eventually, if all goes well, the fox breaks out of cover and we get a view of the fox. And then soon after that, we hopefully see the hounds chasing behind it. The question I always get is, do you kill the fox? Almost never, because the fox is able to go to territory where we can't go, or often will go to ground long before we're able to catch up with it. And you can see that usually they're never even stressed by the situation. Sometimes we even see it sitting on the hill watching the hounds chase behind it. There's a picture of what is an ideal end to a chase for us. When the fox has gone to ground, the hounds are at the hole, and the huntsman is congratulating the hounds for a job well done. So that's sort of the story of what fox hunting is, at least my best understanding of it, and using pictures that I've gathered over the years. Some of them probably from Sue Bloom, who's sitting back in the back here. So why do we fox hunt? I've included this picture, which might be Sue's, because it's a big part of why we fox hunt, this beautiful country that we get to experience on horseback with hounds. And it's a big part of why I'm part of the Carroll County Land Trust, which we'll talk about a little bit later. This is, thanks to Monica Powell, helped me identify that this is the Barnes Farm, right next to my family's property, but I could not figure it out from this vantage point. But it's a beautiful farm right off of Uniontown Road that you can't see very well from Uniontown Road. Here's another reason why we fox hunt: to be going full speed, cross country, over usually private lands with hounds in full cry. It's an experience that most people will never even hear about, yet alone experience. And it's a big part of why we do what we do. And to view the fox, to see that fox go across a field like this, and then to see the hounds trying to figure out the scent after it, is a great experience for someone who's interested in the sport, hunting. And then finally, this is a big part of it too, the camaraderie, the friendship, the mentoring, passing along the tradition to the next generation. Who are members? A lot of times I get the impression that people think that people who fox hunt are very eccentric, very wealthy, and our club is very diverse. We have professionals like myself, we have nurses, we have dental assistants, we have one of my favorite fox hunters, Luther Myers. He was a principal at a local elementary school and drove a school bus. They come from all walks of life, particularly here in Carroll County, where you're coming from a rural type area, a farming background. A lot of the farmers back in the day would go out and have their own what we call farmer's pack. So it's a very diverse, different set of group than what most people might think of when they see the fancy red coats that we'll talk about a little bit later. When do we fox hunt? This is another one. Whenever my wife's around and hears this question, she shakes her head and says, it's all year round. But the actual riding and hunting takes place basically from early September until late March. For our club, it's on Sundays and Wednesdays. Every club's a little bit different, but for Carrollton Hounds, this is what we have. And we only try to go to an area once or twice a month. Where do we hunt? These are different locations that we might go out of. So if you're in the county, you might see us in these locations from time to time. Beggs Road and Beggs Road North. Ship's Quarters, which is on Sullivan Road. Shrivers, which is what we used to call it. Now it's the Powell and Cable Farms on Uniontown or John Hyde Road, right at the bridge there. George Brooks's place, which is also Lippy Brothers. A lot of people know where the Lippy silos are on Lees Mill Road, right out of there. Berry Patch is also primarily Lippy land on Fringer Road, but we go out of a former huntsman and master and landowner Delaney Noble's farm called Berry Patch off of Route 91. Hopewell and Justice Delight is just on the Frederick-Carroll County line. We have the Prees here, and they're gracious enough to let us ride on their property. And Mary's an active member, and her son and daughter-in-law are also active members. And Copper Mine Road is one of our newest places that, through a member's brother, we have access to. Why do landowners let us fox hunt? Really, it's out of the generosity. Some of them have an affinity for it. Maybe their parents or they even did it when they were younger. But we can't express our gratefulness enough for the ability to continue this tradition. Once a year, we do a picnic at the New Windsor Fire Department for our landowners. And then we communicate with landowners as much as we can, visiting with them in the summer and around the holidays. Okay, the history. This is what the Historical Society was probably most interested in hearing about. So what I've started with is the original logo of the Harry Strauss's Carrollton Hounds of 1937. So that was his insignia that was on buttons on his invitations to hunt with him. And then the reconstituted club in 1978, and some of those founding members are here, Edna McNamara and Bob Smith's wife, Meg. Colonel Thackeray is no longer with us. Probably should have on here Everett Hood Wagner should also probably be on there because, in fact, his wife, Doris, I believe, drew this new logo around that time. Now, I know I'm going to be fact-checked by Edna and Meg, and I asked them not to do it in real time, but I have here 1978. I think they might tell me it's 1977. I went by this, and I'll explain the discrepancy as we go here, but they'll be kind and not fact-check me right this moment. So before I get into Carrollton Hounds history, here's a history of fox hunting in America and Maryland. So George Washington is well documented to have enjoyed fox hunting and was very active hunting from his Virginia estate, Mount Vernon. The first pack that's well documented in America is Robert Brooks' pack in southern Maryland, probably came in through St. Mary's County. And he's known to thought to be the one that brought the first pack of hounds to America and to Maryland, and is said to be the first master of foxhounds in America, bringing his family's pack from England to the U.S. He was brought here by Lord Baltimore, who wanted to increase the population of Maryland. Also of note are the Penn Marydale foxhounds. This is a breed, a specific breed of foxhounds that stands for Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. Just like a lot of people are familiar with labs, there's English labs, American labs, crossbred labs, different types of labs. Same with the fox hunting world. The Penn Merrydale is a specific hound bred for the conditions in this area, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware. I tell people they look a little bit like coon hounds. They have long ears, they have a very deep voice, they're a little slower moving, which has become very popular in today's world, where the territory that we're available to hunt to us is shrinking. So it's nice to have the hounds move a little bit slower and not push the fox out of territory. Plus, they're well known to be what we call biddable, very easy to train and very good at listening. You know, if you need to stop them, they're typically known to stop or do what you ask them to. Whereas American hounds are hard driving, they're faster, they're bigger, they're taller, they're longer. Just like most things American, they're designed for long distances. The English foxhounds are designed a little stockier, bigger heads, broader shoulders, covering a different type of terrain. You mix those together, that becomes the crossbred, and then the Walker Hound has roots going back to Robert Brooks foxhounds. I'm not as familiar with them, but they look a little bit like the Penn Merrydale hounds from what I've seen. 1937, Harry Strauss forms the Carrollton Hounds. Here's a picture of that group hunting around that time. What I've done is take a picture of our group, and this is around 2013, put it in black and white, and you can see there's very little difference between what was going on in 1937 and probably all the way back to Robert Brooks' time in 1650 when he first brought the pack of hounds. I wanted to spend a little time on Harry Strauss. And just by looking at this picture, you can probably see that he's a very interesting person. And there's a book written about him called Win Place Show. And I've just jotted down some notes about Harry before I move on, just to give you a sense of how accomplished and interesting a person he was. He was born in 1896. He grew up in a suburb of Baltimore called West Arlington. So think about this time, this was the age of cars, electricity, wireless telegraph. At 14, he went to Baltimore City College, which I guess would have been like high school for them. In 1913, he went to the Johns Hopkins Engineering School, and he was a member of the first engineering class at Johns Hopkins. At this time, Johns Hopkins was at the northern end of the business district, but because of the fire of 1904, they made plans to move up to Homewood. So during his years there, Johns Hopkins University moves from lower Baltimore up to the northern part of Baltimore. In 1916, World War I was on the horizon, and he became a reservist in the Army, but then later switched to the Naval Aviator program and was training in the Pensacola, Long Island, Florida area. The war sort of came to an end before his training was complete, so he became a mechanical engineer at a Milwaukee and Baltimore firm called Cutter and Hammer. That might be Cutler and Hammer, I believe. In early 1927, he attended one of his first horse races, and he was very disappointed that he placed a bet on a long shot, but when it paid off, the odds did not pay off as he expected. Back then, the odds were calculated as you went. They weren't posted regularly, they were estimated at the beginning. This started his career in the American Totalizator Company. This is the device that calculates odds, and one of the first ones was installed at Pimlico, and then a broader, more expansive system in Chicago. Let's see if I have a picture here. Oh, there's the first totalizator, at least part of it, installed at Pimlico. And there's the more expansive one being installed at Chicago. I believe that's Arlington Park. I've jumped ahead here, I'll get to this in a second, but let me just finish my thoughts on how he first became acquainted with fox hunting. He bought a house in Cherry Hill, Reisterstown, and at that time, was out riding his horse. He bought 15 acres there. Eventually, by 1942, it acquired 170 acres in the area and was out riding his horse and came across what I would call as a farmer's pack, an unorganized group of gentlemen who had their own hounds and would bring them together and would hunt the area together. He fell in love with it instantly, decided to rent 30 acres on Emery Church Road area. From there, he built a clubhouse or had a clubhouse there. They would go fox hunting out of that area, but he would spill over into Baltimore County where an established hunt club called Green Spring Valley Hounds had territory. And so he decided to move and buy land on Salem Bottom Road. Today, just recently, the Zepp Christmas tree farm, which backs up to that property, purchased that property. And I was speaking to Mr. Zepp about a year ago, and he had just bulldozed the kennels from that era dating back to 1930, probably 1940 by the time he moved over to Salem Bottom Road. Just continuing how sort of tremendous a person Harry Strauss was, he was also a champion breeder of shorthorn steers. I'll just finish my few thoughts on Harry. He was also known to be a supporter of Garrison Forest, and whenever he had someone that was fox hunting with his club regularly that graduated from Garrison Forest, he would give the young ladies cufflinks with the logo that I showed earlier. So what I've tried to do to continue that is I get a necklace made with that same logo, because Carrollton Hounds has gone back to using the old logo, and I give that to girls, or for guys I get cufflinks, or the club does, I should say. And so we've tried to continue this tradition that I read about in the book Wind Place Show. Harry was also director of the Maryland Jockey Club. He organized and controlled a group that bought the Tropical Racetrack in Miami. He participated in the founding of the Maryland Horse Breeders Association, and he's the director of the Horse Show Association. In 1940, he made an investment of $500,000. I didn't do the math, but that would be a lot of money today, into a company called Eckert Malkley Computer Corporation. And that company became, even though I'm not familiar with it, became pretty integral in the development of computers. Unfortunately, in 1949, Harry was at a business meeting in New York City, and he had a horse running at Pimlico that afternoon, so he wanted to fly back from New York City in a private plane to Baltimore to catch the race. Unfortunately, at 6 o'clock that evening, a farmer in Havre de Grace saw the plane crash, explode, and about 1,000 feet of woods were destroyed where the plane had gone down, and that's where they found the remnants of Harry Strauss and his business partner at the time. So unfortunately, that's sort of the beginning of the end for the original Carrollton Hounds. So by 1949, he passes away. The Hounds at some point move over to Brady Bryson's place on Bell Road. So we go from Emery Church Road to Salem Bottom Road to Bell Road. Brady Bryson is another terrific person in history. He was an attorney who prosecuted at the Nuremberg trials for the atrocities that the Nazi officers committed. He also, a lot of people say when you mention Brady Bryson in this area, they'll say, well, didn't he own Locust Wines in Westminster? And it's my understanding that he also had that business later in life. And he lived until 2006, right there on Bell Road. However, at some point, and I believe it would have been around 1955, he signed over Carrollton Hounds territory to Green Spring Valley Hounds as their territory, and that ended the first Carrollton Hounds Club. What happened to those hounds? And here's where, this is the oral history part that has been passed down to me. Edna and Meg can probably give more detail, but I believe at least some of those hounds went to a gentleman named Buck Blackston, which brings us back to the beginning of my speech when we were talking about how my father was introduced to fox hunting in his area, which is where I think some of those hounds ended up. Buck may have had his own pack and drafted some of those. Some of those hounds might have gone to Green Spring. I don't 100% know, but Buck Blackston, for this purpose of this presentation, I'm saying on Adams Mill Road, there was a kennel there. Whether it was directly related to Carrollton Hounds, maybe. Then, in 1978 or 77, and the reason I say 78 is because I believe that that's the year Buck Blackston passed away, and I believe some of his hounds went to the newly constituted Carrollton Hounds. I know they drafted a lot of hounds from other places in Virginia, and I can see Meg shaking her head, so we'll get a more accurate description. But in 1977, 1978 is the reformation of the Carrollton Hounds with that second logo that I showed. So from roughly 1970 and 1980, the kennels were on Springdale Road. Something happens and the kennels are moved over to Fridinger Mill Road, which is the Bachman Valley area. And they're there from 1980 to 1990. A gentleman named Eddie Osborne is responsible for hunting the hounds. My understanding is he worked for the Lippy brothers and knew a lot of people and was able to hunt this whole area. And then in 1990, with Eddie and others, the kennels were moved over to Warborough Road, and that's where they are to this day. Other clubs in Carroll County that I am familiar existed at one point in time. As you can imagine, fox hunting was extremely popular over history, and a lot of them were farmers' packs, sort of unorganized or loosely organized packs. Some of them include Mayberry Hounds, which was outside of Uniontown. Gil Abbott and John Millen were involved in that, or at least them and their dads. Pretty Boy Hunt Club was located very close to where our kennels are outside of the Hampstead, like Fairmount Road, close to Fairmount, Warborough, Utz Road. The other road is escaping me right now. Donald Duck Savage had a pack not too far outside of Mount Airy on Gillis Road. That's an interesting story. Duck had a friend or employee named Nick that I remember seeing when we would show up to hunt there sometimes. And that was a very interesting group to go out hunting with Duck and Nick. At that time, I was through Taylorsville Hunt Club, who my dad was hunting with, and myself as a young person. The Lippy of Miller Station, I'd never heard about them. Luther Myers told me that this is where he first started hunting with, I believe it was Joe Lippy, but I'm not sure. That not Joe Lippy of the Lippy Brothers farm, but totally different, unrelated Lippys, or at least distant relatives. And so that's where someone that I really enjoyed hunting with, Luther Myers, that's where he started, also very close to where the existing kennels are. Adams Mill Hounds we talked about. I also didn't know they were called Adams Mill Hounds. I thought they were just Buck Blackston's pack. I ran into June Bollinger at an agribusiness meeting and became friends with her, and she explained that absolutely they called themselves the Adam Mill Hound or Hunt Club, and she had a banner that they would use when they went on parade. So part of the presentation I'd like to talk about is what people that like to see this happen, what they can do to help continue the tradition. I'm involved in the Carroll County Land Trust, and my thought being that even if fox hunting doesn't continue for the very long run, at least we can continue views. Having trouble with this clicker. At least we can preserve views like this, even if we won't be able to fox hunt across them going forward. Hopefully we can and continue it for generations going forward, but that's why I'm part of the Land Trust. If there's areas that you know that are available and you need large swaths of land to be able to do this, I'd love to hear about them and meet with you and your neighbors to see whether it might be possible for us to continue doing this in Carroll County. It took about 35, 40 minutes. That's probably a little quicker than what I was supposed to, but that'll leave plenty of times for questions and those fact-checking that I said weren't going to be done real time, but maybe can be done here and give me some insights into some of the things I talked about. I'd love to hear from any of you with questions.
It was a very interesting and very colorful talk. I just have, no? Says on. Jan is in on.
She's getting it, man.
All right, anyway, how old, you use the same horse all the time, or how does that work?
Well, that's a good question. I meant to point out some of the horses that my father and I were on. Horses, you know, you can start, you know, they're raced from 2-year-olds, and of course the biggest races are the 3-year-old races that everyone knows about. And then a lot of times fox hunters are a little bit older. So you might start a horse hunting at 4, 5, 6, and they can hunt until early 20s, sort of at the latest. So depending on how long you fox hunt for, like someone like me, you go through some horses over time, but you might have use of a hunt horse in its prime for 15 years, something like that.
Is the horse at the hunt club, or keep your own horse? How does that work?
Yeah, so the question was, well, you probably heard that one. The horse belongs to the individual, the hounds belong typically to the clubs. Each club is structured a little bit different, but in this case, the hounds are definitely owned by the club, and everyone is responsible for bringing their own horse or mount.
How many dogs do you have at a hunt?
We take out a little less than some of the bigger hunt clubs. We take out about, we call it 15 couple, which you multiply by 2, so that's about 30. Some clubs will take out more like 20 couple, which is 40 hounds. That's a pretty well-established hunt club that has a lot of territory. Will take out that many. We're more like 30 hounds when we go out.
That's amazing. What kind of dogs are they?
We have foxhounds. They're ours are crossbred. They have a lot of heavy influence from Penn Marydale that we talked about, and then a mixture of American, not so much English, but American crossbred and Penn Marydale is what we have.
Hey, Jason, I have a question over here. If the hounds do get really close, I guess you guys have them disciplined to the point where you can say something and they back away, or how does that work?
It's a good question, and I get it a lot. It happens rarely, Jason, and when they do, it's usually a sick or unhealthy fox, and it's over fairly quickly or very quickly, and that's sort of the end of it. But it's not done for that purpose, and it's a very rare occasion that it happens.
And this microphone is working now, so if anyone on this side...
Yeah, this one too. How long is the fox hunt?
Yep, we go out for about 2 hours, sometimes 4 hours. Let's call it 2 to 4 hours, depending on the day. Back in the day, my father would tell me how long they would go out for. It could be 4 or 6 hours, and sometimes they'd go out in the morning and catch what he called the 4 o'clock fox and continue hunting into the early evening.
Here we go.
You didn't mention the paneling. Who does your paneling? Do your members do that, or do you have somebody else that does it, or don't you have any jumps?
Great question. Paneling, which is making sure there's jumps or access to get areas, in and out of pastures. A lot of the land in Carroll County, just driving around, you'll notice that it's open farmland, crops. There's not as many dairies as there were. There's not as many cattle farms as there was. But yes, the club is responsible for that and building and maintaining those as best we can. But in our particular area, there's not a whole lot, whereas when you go into Baltimore County, where there's a lot more horse farms and a lot more fences, there's quite a bit more jumping in the Baltimore County and Harford County areas. I think you need a microphone.
Here we go, right here.
Hi, I just was wanting to know if, what are the impediments to future fox hunting in terms of getting the ability to hunt on private land or How does that affect us in this?
Yeah. It's a good question because this sport, this tradition, was probably reached its peak in modern times in the 70s and 80s, and if you think what has happened since then, you know, you saw the list of all those clubs that were in Carroll County. Now there's essentially only Carrollton Hounds, and that's a result of less open space, you know, more developments that have happened, properties changing hands, and people not wanting you to ride your 30 or 40 horses and your 30 or 40 foxhounds across their property. So it really is about the generosity of the landowner allowing us to do that. So the impediments primarily are the shrinking of available land to do this and the reduction of resources that are available. Things like solar panels eat up land. Projects like the MPRP, Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, also eat up land and make it less viable for the landowners to allow us to continue to do it. That's why I say that I would love to continue to preserve the land in Carroll County in this area, whether we're able to continue fox hunting across it or not, because it would be great to be able to at least preserve those views. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the training of the hounds.
Mm-hmm.
I heard that they'll take a young one and couple it with an experienced hound,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they learn. And how old are they when they first start learning?
I love this question. It's a great question because it talks about the mentality of the pack and how do you teach a hound to chase the scent of a fox and not chase the scent of a raccoon or a deer. And it's as you suspected and explained, you start them very young. You know, they're born in the early spring, and then some clubs, they all do it differently. We like to start walking them out the following summer with their older brothers and sisters. So now, during that time period, we may or may not couple them using a device that goes in between the two collars. We find that can be a little disruptive because now you've got hounds getting caught up in the couples. But that's a well-known technique to keep the puppies in with the pack as you're walking on foot during the summertime. Then you just gradually get them used to that routine, and then you might take out one or two of this year's puppies with the pack once you start in the early or late summer, early fall, you know, August, September. And now that the puppies are confused at first, but quickly learn what they're supposed to do just from the pack. We don't give them any real instruction other than how to pack up and what they come to the horn, which we didn't talk about.
This one here.
Harry has a question.
I was just wondering, people might want to know, where do you get your hounds? Do you go to clubs? Do you breed them stuff?
Yeah, great question. We breed almost all of our hounds, so they're all homebred, but the clubs do, if we have too many puppies, we might ask other hunts if they're interested in having any of ours and vice versa. So we might have some hounds or bloodlines from neighboring hunts that we incorporate into, or we might breed to one of their hounds if we're interested in developing a certain bloodline.
What is the history of your attire? Because I know some of you have your coats, some of you have black coats, but it's a definite dress that's done for it.
Yeah, probably should have gotten into that. So the red coats, which we call pink coats, which is a whole, you know, every question devolves into a whole other story, but they're called pink coats in our world. And those are the people that are responsible, what I described, responsible for hunting the hounds, either the huntsman or the whippers in, we call them staff sometimes, or if they're a master of the foxhounds, meaning they're in charge of all aspects of the hunt club or the hunting part of the club. In our club, the masters and the huntsmen are in charge of all aspects of the hunt, our president and our board are responsible for the business side, making sure we have the insurance, making sure our waivers are up to speed, admitting new members. That's how our club does it. Every club does it differently. Everyone else is usually wearing black coats. If you're a member and you've contributed a great deal to the club, you get what we call the colors. So we have a navy blue collar that goes on your felt, that goes on your collar, and that indicates that you've been well hunted and contribute to the club. Earlier in the years, when it's hot, we wear these, which isn't traditional. Later on, when it gets a little bit cooler, we go to what we call rat catcher, which is sort of like a tweed coat and a tie, white shirt and a tie. And then later we move to the formal attire. And each item has significance. As an example, we wear a white stock tie with a pin in it. And Monica's here who will tell you that I can't stand it when people show up with colored stock ties, because everything is supposed to have a purpose, and the purpose of the stock tie and the pin, as an example, is supposed to be if your horse gets hurt, you can wrap the leg and use the pin to tie the stock tie around the horse's leg. Everything's supposed to be very workmanlike in your attire. Go ahead, Monica.
Can you explain the difference between recognized and unrecognized hunts and why Carrollton chooses to stay unrecognized?
Yeah.
Today?
So now you're getting into the depths of the fox hunting world. There's something called the Master of Foxhounds Master of Foxhounds Association, which is in some ways an informal agreement between all the hunts that says, okay, Green Spring Valley has Baltimore County, or most of it. Elkridge Hartford has most of Hartford County. It shouldn't be that someone just starts a club and starts hunting someone else's territory. Now, whoever owns that property obviously can give permission to whoever they want, but it's sort of a loose association of all the different clubs so that people don't step on each other's foot and cause problems with the landowners, so that the landowners say, I'm tired of you guys fighting, I don't want any of you here. So that's sort of the rationale behind having recognized hunt clubs as part of the Master of Foxhounds Association. When Carrollton Hounds was reconstituted, I talked a little bit about how Carroll County had been assigned to a neighboring Baltimore County club. Rather than try to fight for that back, we were able to start hunting Carroll County, and today we have a very good relationship with Green Spring Valley Hounds, and there's no issues whatsoever. I'm guessing there was issues over time, but fortunately, at this time, we cooperate and work together, and we go out with them, and some of them come out with us from time to time, and that's the way it's supposed to work.
Jason, I'm sorry if you said this when at the beginning and I missed it, but you brought some exhibit items. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Thanks for bringing that up, Lynn. So I brought the Win Place show book to further go into what an interesting character Harry Strauss was. He wrote this book. It is I would describe it as a satire of a master of foxhounds. So he's sort of satiring himself and his life in this book, and it's a beautiful book. I couldn't get too far in it, but it just sort of goes to show what type of person Harry was, involved in all these things, yet he took time to write a book about being a master of foxhound. There's a book here about the Penn Marydales. This is a gentleman from Pennsylvania. Everybody knows him as Doc Addis. His name is Todd Addis, MFH. And it describes the history of the Penn Marydale. There's also some historical documents from Harry Strauss's time, pedigree books, meaning the breeding information of his hounds. There's letters between Harry Strauss and other masters, and all kinds of interesting things in there. There's also a picture that I found at the Historical Society. A friend of mine, Tom Gordon, had in there on display, and I was able to purchase a reproduction of the 1937 Carroll County Parade. And it's a panoramic, and in one corner it has a fox hunting group. I assume it's the Carrollton Hounds, Harry Strauss's Carrollton Hounds. It would have been about the time that he was forming it. And then it has a long picture of other people, some in ox-drawn cart, some in horse-drawn cart, some of them, a lot of them on horseback wearing white coats with a blue tie or stock tie is what it looks like. It's black and white, so you can't tell for sure. But it's a great picture, and it's celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the founding of Carroll County, so that's a great picture to check out. And then there's a poor attempt at our modern pedigree book that I put together and I keep electronically, and I printed it out at one point way back when I took over, so you can take a look at pictures of some of the more modern hounds that we have, although I haven't kept up with printing everything out the way I was back then. Great question. Thank you, Lynn.
Donna, you have a question? Back.
I got a dull question. What is, how old do the dogs usually remain that you use them? I mean, is there an age that they cut off? And then, what do you do with the retired dogs?
Oh, I love that question. Would you like one? We hunt them until they sort of can't, until they're not keeping up. And then we sort of pride ourselves on adopting them out, and we usually don't have a problem adopting them out. When we do hit a roadblock, the Carroll County Humane Society has been a great partner, and they can adopt out hounds very quickly for some reason. And we're able to as well. We try not to use them. We haven't used them in a couple of years, but we almost always have a hound or two that's ready to retire, or sometimes we have a puppy or two that doesn't work out and needs to find a home. And they actually make pretty good house or farm dogs. In their kennels, they don't go to the bathroom too much in the inside part of their kennels, so they quickly learn to go outside. Now again, we have if you ask my wife, she might tell you differently, that it does take them a little longer to learn because we've had plenty of accidents from hounds that we've adopted. But generally speaking, they can hold it and go in and out, and are pretty easy to house train. Very gentle. They sort of lose their hunting desire once they become a house dog, is what I've found.
Anyone else? Yeah. Jim, here.
I may have missed the very beginning of this, but you keep the hounds in a kennel. Who takes care of them?
Oh, that's a good question. In our club, it's the huntsman, myself, and our joint master, Jim Price. So that's myself, Jim Price, Ben Swope, and then a few others help us. But for the most part, Ben goes there every morning, Jim goes there most nights, and I'm there quite a bit on weekends and filling in as needed. And as you suspect, it's quite a bit of work to keep up 40 hounds.
How do they get exercise when they're not running?
They have long runs and a play yard that they get turned out in, and they're exercised or walked all year round, at least twice a week. You know, just like you would walk your dog out on a road, or when they're being hunted, they get more than enough exercise by going out 2 or 3 times a week.
Hi, I want to thank Jason. I think he's done a tremendous job sharing the history all the way back from Henry Strauss. And it's no big difference, you know, when we exactly started with Jason,
Right.
but I would say 77, 78, we got going. And yeah, it was, I think 78, we hunted jointly with Mayberry, with the Abbots in the beginning. But Carrollton Hounds in the beginning, in 78, did not come from Green Spring at all. They were drafted from some from Abbots and some from Frederick County.
So none came from Buck Blackston? Edna? None came from Buck?
These were gone by then.
These were gone.
Yeah, he wasn't gone, but he had gotten rid of his hands.
Gotcha.
We got some from Fairville, we got some from St. Mary's, I think up in Frederick County, we got none from Green Spring, none at all. They didn't want us even start out, so there was the club, so they weren't helping us at all. Colonel Thackeray knew a lot of people, and he was the one who said,
Mhm.
and talk to you. We got some from a private pack down in Carroll County or Montgomery County. But that's where our original hounds came from.
Yep.
Good job.
For folks like you who do not ride, but find this utterly beautiful, the chase, it's almost like a ballet, across the beautiful autumn landscape with the hounds and the special relationship that you folks have with the hounds. Please mention Hilltop, because there might be people that would appreciate, seeing it with their own eyes that don't ride.
Yeah, great point. Sue Bloom would follow us around and take beautiful pictures. Like I said, I think the one was hers, at least one. And so you can find us, our website, online and reach out to myself. And people do come in what we call a hilltop, sit on a hill and watch the hunt from, on foot or drive to a certain spot and watch. And we'd love to have people that are interested come. A good day to do that is on opening day, which is always the last Sunday in October. I didn't talk about it as much as I meant to, but a lot of that happens right on the Smith property, or now the Powell Farm, the Shriver, what was the Shriver Farm? I think outside of New Windsor, John Hyde Road area, and that's always the last Sunday in October. That's a great one where it's you have the most pageantry. Everyone's dressed formal. The horses are done up as nice as they get all year. The hounds get blessed by the priest, and then we move off for the hunt.
How many people in here are or have been riders in the hunt? Raise your hand. Wow, that's cool. Very cool. Galen?
Jason, how many properties do you currently hunt, like in Carroll County?
Yeah, this will give you a sense of how hard it is to do what we do, because I like to tell people it's nice to have about 1,000 acres. And in today's world, that means about 10 farms, 10 100-acre farms. And you can imagine how hard that is to piece together 10 families or farms that are willing to allow you to ride and take. We can get it by with as little as 500, especially early in the season. Once all the crops and foliage are off, the land shrinks dramatically, because now the fox doesn't have a whole lot of space to run in circles around. It might run where we don't have permission to go. But that's about what we need and what it requires. And if you think that we have 6 to 8 places that we go with 500 to 1,000 acres each, that gives you a sense, I think, of what you're asking.
Jason, thank you again for a fabulous talk and the fantastic photos, and I can imagine Sue Bloom definitely playing a role in that. So thank you very, very much, and visit Jason's exhibit items over here, and thank you all very, very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.